Hey, we've got breaking news on Dolphins today, and it's a move a lot of people saw coming, but the first major domino to fall in the midst of the Dolphins offseason. Miami has announced they have released Emmanuel Ogbah, the defensive end edge rusher who really underperformed this past season, played less than 20% of snaps on the defensive side of things for Miami. And that was an area of strength for the Miami Dolphins as far as the edge rushing is concerned. You had guys with breakout years like Jalen Phillips before he got injured. You had Bradley Chubb putting together one of his best seasons of his career. And who could forget the play of Andrew Van Ginkel? So in the midst of all of that, the way 2023 went, you thought, okay, who's the odd man out here? It's Emmanuel Ogbah. Highest base salary on the Miami Dolphins, playing less than 20% of snaps. That's why this move was made. And again, this was a move a lot of people saw coming. We've been calling for it on Dolphins Today. Hey, you want to clear up some cap space? Release Emmanuel Ogbah. And that's exactly what the Dolphins did today. And when breaking news happens, we've got you covered on Dolphins Today. That's why you subscribe. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. We've got an offseason goal of 60,000 subscribers. We are chipping away. So if you know a Dolphins friend, let them know. Hey, Dolphins Today, they've got daily Dolphins coverage, daily Dolphins news, rumors leading up to free agency. Of course, the NFL draft coming up. We've got it all covered on Dolphins Today. And the big news of the day, the Miami Dolphins release Emmanuel Ogbah. And let's get into the numbers for a second here, because obviously this is the business part of the NFL. This is why this move was done. Ogbah had signed a large contract over a 3-year deal, and because the base salary was the most expensive on the Dolphins roster, this move frees up over $13 million in cap space. Now, it was also announced earlier today that the NFL salary cap is increasing, so that gives the Dolphins a little bit more room as well, a little bit more flexibility. And by the numbers, with Emmanuel Ogbah being released and freeing up $13+ million in cap space, now the Dolphins have about $25 million more to trim up and before the league year starts in March. So what does that mean? Some other cut candidates that we've talked about on the channel before. Xavien Howard goes to the top of the list because that's another guy that's paid a lot of money for the Miami Dolphins and didn't necessarily perform particularly well in 2023. So he's at the top of my list of my cut candidates. Jeff Wilson Jr., another guy to keep your eye on at the running back position. If you cut him, you're freeing up roughly $3 million in cap space. And that's the business part of the NFL that we continue to talk about here on Dolphins Today. So the big news of the day, you've got Emmanuel Ogbah cut by the Miami Dolphins, frees up over $13 million in cap space, and the Dolphins continue to work for that salary cap relief in terms of when the new league year starts in 2024 in March, and we'll have to continue to trim out salary and free up cap space by perhaps cutting different players, restructuring some deals. I know there's been a lot of talk about Tua's big deal that's coming. If you restructure Tua's deal, because right now he's set to be about a $23 million hit on the cap, and that's playing his 5th year of his rookie deal. So if you're able to restructure Tua's deal, then what that looks like is the Dolphins are able to free up a ton of cap space. The same with restructuring Tyreek Hill's deal. So those are two guys to keep an eye on. And then again, some of the cut candidates, because when you have the emergence at the defensive end position like the Dolphins did with obviously Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips and Andrew Van Ginkel, Emmanuel Ogbah was just not a guy you were going to keep around. And I think he saw the writing on the wall. Remember, he was inactive in that Week 17 game against the Baltimore Ravens, and that was a game in which the Dolphins could have used some defensive edge help on the defensive side of things. So the fact that he was not active for that game, he was a healthy scratch, I think said a lot about the future with Emmanuel Ogbah. Now, as far as who picks him up, this is a guy that still has plenty of gas left in the tank. He's not too long in the tooth, and depending on the right scheme, the right fit, I think he still has some value to add to an NFL roster, somebody that's looking for more of a traditional defensive end in that 4-3 system. Because remember, the Dolphins played that 3-4 system under Vic Fangio, and that will look a lot different next year with a new defensive coordinator in Anthony Weaver. But regardless of who the defensive coordinator is, you can't have a guy that's playing less than 20% of the snaps make the most amount of money on your team by way of base salary if you're looking to trim salary cap space, and that's exactly what this move was done. And anytime the Dolphins make a move, we've got you covered on Dolphins Today. That's why you subscribe, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Join our Dolphins Today family, and remember, we go live every single Wednesday with live shows, your chance to win awesome prizes on the channel as well. And you know what? We've got another mock draft coming up later this week as well. So make sure you're tuned into that, because the Dolphins have a lot of big questions to be answered in the midst of this offseason. And I would say Chris Grier and the front office are in a win now mode, but a very important offseason. Same with Mike McDaniel, because yes, 2 years at the helm of the Miami Dolphins, 2 playoff appearances, that's great, but this fan base is starving for postseason success. And that becomes the goal, that becomes the mission for Chris Grier, who has had I wouldn't say tumultuous past with the Miami Dolphins. He's shown he'll make some big trades. He's given up a lot of draft capital, but it hasn't materialized into the winning play that Dolphins and Dolphins fans have expected. So many big question marks around this Dolphins organization moving forward. What will they do in free agency? What will they do in the draft? Will they make some big trades like they've shown in the past? I mean, my goodness, Tyreek Hill landed in Miami by way of a trade. Of course, Bradley Chubb landed in Miami by way of a trade. So Chris Grier and that front office has shown time and time again they're willing to make the big trade. They're willing to make the important moves. And today's important move, I believe, will be the first domino to fall of perhaps several noteworthy releases, and Xavien Howard could be next. That's my prediction, and nothing yet necessarily to point to that, but just seeing the writing on the wall the same way we saw the writing on the wall with Emmanuel Ogbah. Here's a guy that makes a lot of money, doesn't necessarily produce on the field. That becomes the equation. And Xavien Howard, I think, is tinkering along those same lines as a player late in his career. And now he has had a lot of success with the Miami Dolphins. He's had 2 Pro Bowls and all-pro season as well. The Dolphins drafted Xavien Howard out of Baylor. He spent his entire career with the Dolphins. But at this point in time, and I think, again, speaking to the writing on the wall, you saw with the Dolphins kind of hinting at the fact that, hey, Xavien Howard, you might need to take a pay cut. And when he was asked about that, he absolutely had no interest in taking a pay cut, which is fine. That's his prerogative. That's his right. I think, and he even said, if you were asked to take a pay cut, would you? And I think the answer for me, the answer for you, just about everybody, not necessarily in the business of taking pay cuts. So Xavien Howard might be looking to play his NFL play elsewhere in 2024 if the Dolphins do in fact release him. But the big news today, Emmanuel Ogbah released. That will free up over $13 million in cap space for the Dolphins. They still got about $25 million to go to be under that salary cap when the new league year starts in March. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Remind you to subscribe to the channel, because when breaking news happens, we've got you covered. That's why you subscribe on Dolphins Today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Dolphins Today.